Welcome everyone to today's session, which will be discussing protecting yourself and your customers from ransomware. My name is Henry Axelrod. I'm a Principal Solutions Architect here at AWS, and I'll be joined today by my colleague Girish Chanchalani, who is also a Senior Partner Solutions Architect here at AWS. So, looking at today's agenda, we'll be covering a few different topics. First, we're going to take a quick look at the importance of ransomware protection. We're going to take a look at what you need to protect, which is generally pretty much everything. We're going to look at the important services and features that AWS provides to help you protect against ransomware. We're also going to look at some partner solutions that help protect you against ransomware. Finally, we're going to leave you with a call to action and some useful resources to help you get started with your ransomware protection strategy. So why is ransomware protection important? Well, cybersecurity protection in general, and especially ransomware protection, is becoming increasingly important in the industry. In fact, according to Gartner, around 75% of IT organizations will face a ransomware event by 2025. And these events have actual impact to your customers and your business. In fact, analysts estimate about $21 billion in loss, in financial loss directly for customers in 2021. As well as a ransomware event occurring about every 11 seconds. So CIOs are starting to think of ransomware as more of a question of when, as opposed to a question of if. So what are some customers doing to help protect against ransomware? Well, many of our US customers are using a security framework to map their security and controls. The most common security framework in the US is the NIST framework. The NIST cybersecurity framework is an industry standard and covers the major areas for considering when protecting yourself from ransomware and other cybersecurity threats. This includes identification, protection, detection, responding, and recovering from ransomware. This is a comprehensive strategy, and while AWS and our partners can help customers with all aspects of cybersecurity, in this session we're going to touch on different aspects and mainly focus on the protection, detection, and recovery areas of the NIST cybersecurity framework. And especially I want to mention that recovery is especially important, but often overlooked. Having and testing a recovery plan is just as important as having a plan for protection and detection of ransomware or other malware. So one of the key aspects of ransomware strategy is to identify the most important data for you to protect. Generally, customers have some data that needs to be prioritized over others. The amount of data and the solution you choose as part of your strategy creates trade-offs between cost and time. So the more data you protect potentially increases your cost, and the type of solution you choose may create a higher cost but a quicker recovery time. So being able to understand these trade-offs when you're selecting AWS services as well as partner solutions are important to ensure that you're fully protected to the level that you need to recover your critical data in the event of ransomware. So one thing that customers do is work on disaster recovery. And disaster recovery strategies usually cover a few different options and scenarios. First is going from one data center to another, which is a typical strategy that customers might deploy in an on-premises solution. Customers also who are on AWS may have disaster recovery set up between different AWS availability zones within the same region, or have disaster recovery set up to an alternate region. Finally, many of our customers set up disaster recovery from their existing data centers to AWS Cloud. So AWS Cloud can be a recovery environment in the event of an outage with their primary data center. So disaster recovery does address the needs of customers for availability issues of a particular site or location. However, when we think about ransomware, it really addresses a slightly different need, although related. So with ransomware, it's really about protecting your data and protecting it from compromise. So even though you have a place to recover your environment, you also want to ensure that your data is not modified, or in case of ransomware, often ransomware works by encrypting your existing data sets so that you can't access them. So being able to provide functionality like a logical air gap, which will separate the environment where you're storing that protected ransomware data from your primary location, or even protect it in a alternate AWS account, so that should your primary data set become compromised, or your credentials become compromised, you have a place where your data is safe and protected. In addition, using techniques for data immutability is important when it comes to ransomware. This gives you the ability to ensure that your data is going to be the same when you go to recover it as the data that you backed up, without the possibility of it being modified by ransomware or even deleted. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Girish, who is going to tell you about some AWS services.
So thanks, Henry. So when it comes to data protection, backup data is your last line of defense, and you want to protect it at all costs. So let's start off with an overview of our S3 storage service, which is a popular service for storing backups. And we will focus on a few key features that help keep your valuable data safe. So as we see on the slide here, in S3, there are a number of storage classes available. These classes provide 11 nines of durability, as we keep 3 copies of data spread out across multiple availability zones within a region. So in case one availability zone was to go down, your data is still accessible from the other availability zones, or AZs. Now, these storage classes are categorized based on the frequency of access. So for data that needs to be accessed with millisecond latency, we offer storage classes like S3 Standard, Intelligent Tiering, Infrequent Access, and One Zone. Whereas for data that needs to be stored for long term, without a need for immediate access, like your yearly backups, we have archive storage classes like Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive that provide very economical long-term storage. So where this is relevant is, in the case of ransomware, you need to make sure your active backup data, which is your latest backup data from which you'll be restoring your applications from, that is stored on a storage class that can be accessed readily. You'd want to make sure that you understand the pricing models of each of these storage classes. So for example, with S3 Standard, storage costs are higher than S3 Infrequent Access, but there are no retrieval fees. Whereas with S3 Infrequent Access, storage costs are almost half of what you pay for S3 Standard, but then there are some retrieval fees when you want to access that data. So you need to make sure you're considering all these factors upfront. And down on the slide here, you can see the storage costs below. So for example, the cost of storing data on S3 Standard in US East 1 region costs around 2 cents a GB, or $21 a terabyte a month. For S3 Infrequent Access, this goes down by almost 40%. And towards the end, we see Glacier Deep Archive that costs only $1 a terabyte a month. So with that, let's take a look at a few key features in S3 that help keep your data safe. Now, important one for ransomware is S3 object lock feature, and this one provides a write once, read many, or warm type of capability for S3 objects to make them immutable. This means that once you write your objects, they cannot be overwritten at all, either forever or for a certain time period. Now, the way it works is there are two ways to manage the object lock. The first one is where you specify a retention period for which the objects are locked. And the second one is you have the capability to set legal holds. Now, retention period, as the name suggests, specifies a fixed time period during which the object remains locked. And then legal hold is similar, that it locks the object, but then there is no expiration date associated with it. So once it is set, the object is locked until and unless you don't release that lock, right? And both of these can be enabled independently. Now, this locking of objects is available at the S3 objects and the individual object version level. So it is very granular in terms of which object versions do you want to lock. Then there are robust auditing, tracking, and reporting capabilities available for object lock. For example, using S3 inventory reports, you can get reports on what's the retention date for the objects that have object lock enabled, what's the lock mode, is the legal hold status enabled, and so on. Then you can use S3 event notifications to track access and changes to your object lock configurations and data using AWS CloudTrail. Now, AWS CloudTrail, if you're not familiar, is an audit logging service that is available on the AWS platform. All in all, this feature is a critical feature for helping you keep your backup data in an immutable state and prevent it from being modified or overwritten by ransomware. And this serves as a foundational feature behind many of our storage partner solutions for protecting your valuable data from ransomware. Let's look at this other feature here, which is AWS Private Link for Amazon S3. Now, AWS Private Link is a feature that provides private connectivity between VPCs, AWS services, and your on-premise networks without exposing your data to the public internet. And early this year, we added support for accessing Amazon S3 via Private Link. This is important for customers, especially in the healthcare and financial domains, where you are dealing with large amounts of sensitive customer data, and you have all sorts of compliance and regulations in place that you need to follow to ensure the security of this data, right from the time it is transmitted over the wire to it being stored in your backup repository. So in our context, the use case is your on-premise backup software using Private Link can communicate privately with Amazon S3 for storing and retrieving your backup data, providing you an additional private channel for this communication. Earlier, without this capability, customers had to set up proxy servers inside their VPCs and communicate with S3 via those proxies. Now, the challenge with that was the solution was difficult to scale and hard to manage. Now, with this feature now available, applications can talk to S3 directly, making the configuration a lot simpler. And the slide highlights this. So you have on-premise applications talking via Direct Connect or VPN to Amazon S3 via the interface endpoints. These interface endpoints are the ones that are providing this private connectivity to S3. So this is an additional feature of S3 that helps protect your data traversing over the network. So overall, if we zoom out a bit and focus on what are some of the foundational elements available in AWS for protecting your data and applications, the ability to use multi-account based strategy along with lockdown network segmentation would be one of the top 3 items that you would want to design for protection against ransomware. An AWS account provides natural security, access and billing boundaries for your AWS services and enables you to achieve resource independence and isolation. So for example, users outside of your account do not have access to your resources by default. So you can choose to run your critical applications in one set of accounts that are tightly locked down with security permissions, and then you can choose to run your non-critical applications in another set of AWS accounts that do not have such stringent permissions. Or perhaps you can choose to keep a copy of your backup data in one account and then copy critical backups to another AWS account with S3 object lock enabled, and have a third AWS account to test out your recoveries. So this essentially provides you a logical air-gapped mechanism to securely store your data and protect it from malicious access. Then within a single account, from a networking isolation perspective, we provide strong capabilities to lock down access to your applications and data via mechanisms such as public and private subnets, security groups, network access control lists, and others. So multi-account and network isolation is a basic strategy that should be the foundation of your infrastructure design when architecting for protection from ransomware. With that background, we'll hand it over to Henry to walk us through a few storage solutions from our third-party vendors. Over to you, Henry.
Now that we've talked about some of the key AWS services, we want to start discussing some of the other solutions. Specifically, as mentioned, we're going to focus on solutions that provide protection and recovery capabilities. While we won't have time to go over every solution available, we will talk about some of the industry leaders in the space according to Gartner, and solutions that help address ransomware specifically. As we mentioned, many of these solutions we are going to share today are primarily backup and restore solutions. While we are going to focus on ransomware aspects of these solutions, it's also important to have an overall backup and recovery process. Here are some high-level considerations. First, you want to ensure that you consider categorizing and prioritizing your applications so that when a large-scale operational events happen, you know which systems to restore first. You also want to ensure that your RTO and RPO requirements map to your business stakeholders' expectations. Equally as important is you want to make sure to test your restore process. So I can't emphasize this enough. A restore process without, or a backup process without a tested restore is not a comprehensive strategy. You want to make sure that you can actually restore your data, not just assume that you can restore your data. So you want to do everything you need to be able to recreate those workloads and all the data that is required. You want to make sure you have, for example, backup servers on AWS. So in case you need to recover on AWS, you have that available, even if your primary location is unavailable. So now I want to talk about some of the customer deployed solutions that you can deploy into your environment to help with protect you against ransomware. These are going to be solutions that deploy into your AWS account, which gives you full control over how to deploy and configure them to meet your needs. The first solution I want to discuss is Commvault. Commvault Complete provides a comprehensive backup solution that supports many different types of applications and AWS services. However, I want to focus on a few key areas where Commvault helps protect against ransomware. Specifically, Commvault has anomaly detection, which helps in early identification of abnormal patterns in data that can help avoid overwriting backup data with already impacted data by ransomware or other malware. It also enables automated response when an anomaly is detected to help keep you notified and protected. To help add an additional layer of protection, it also supports S3 Object Lock, which provides immutable copies of data so that you can be sure you always have a good copy of data that can't be modified by ransomware and is secured durably on Amazon S3 storage. This brings us to Rubrik. Rubrik is also a customer-deployed backup and recovery solution and supports a wide variety of workloads. Rubrik provides an appliance-based solution for protecting your on-premises workloads and protecting cloud workloads you deploy their software on EC2 instances. Rubrik has Worm, or write once, read many, capabilities built into its platform. And for backups stored on S3, they also support S3 Object Lock. Rubrik supports AWS Private Link for S3 as well, so you can back up your data that's sent over a private channel for additional security and doesn't require public endpoints. On the detection side, Rubrik ransomware detection capabilities can detect malware and warn you of any such malware that's detected, as shown in the middle of the slide here. You could see that X number of servers and Y number of files have been impacted, and then take corrective actions such as isolating those backups. On the recovery side, in addition to restoring your data back to either the same location or a different location, Rubrik lets you spin up applications directly from your backups without having to do a restore. You can use this functionality to check the validity of your existing backups. Then let's take a look at Veeam. This is another solution used by many customers from small to large. Veeam provides a few key features for ransomware. First, Veeam's Sure Backup will allow you to scan for malware as part of your backup verification process, thus helping to ensure you detect malware at the time of backup when you could still take action. Then it stores your backup in S3 or S3 Glacier using its capacity and archive tier features, which you can leverage S3 Object Lock to ensure that your data is backed up and it won't be modified or deleted. Then, when or if you need to restore, Veeam supports a feature called Secure Restore that enables you to scan the restored system to ensure that there is no malware before returning that system to production. Another solution is Veritas, which has its NetBackup product, which is common in enterprise environments. To help protect your data, NetBackup supports end-to-end encryption of data at rest and in transit, and supports S3 Private Link as well, so you don't need to use any public endpoints. It also supports S3 Object Lock to ensure your backups cannot be modified or deleted. In addition to its protection features, NetBackup also allows you to monitor your systems both to ensure you are protecting everything in your environment and detecting anomalies that might occur. NetBackup also ensures you can recover at scale with fully orchestrated recoveries. You can test your disaster recovery process through non-disruptive rehearsals. For smaller scale recoveries, you can also recover as granular as an individual file, including the ability for end users to self-service their recoveries. Next solution I want to look at is Zerto. Zerto focuses on disaster recovery of VM and other workloads, such as containers. The way it works is Zerto captures the changes of these sources at a very frequent interval, every few seconds, for example, providing an almost synchronous replication type of protection mechanism for your applications. These frequent recovery checkpoints can be used to restore the applications back either on premises or on AWS, giving you the fastest capability to recover your applications in the case of disaster recovery. So from a recovery perspective, you have multiple of these checkpoints available to recover from. And recently, Zerto has also added additional capability where you can periodically back up your data and keep it around for long term. So the use case is you have these high frequency recovery points taken for DR, and periodically, for example, once a day, you take a backup. With this backup feature, you can use Amazon S3 Object Lock to make sure the long-term backups are immutable. This gives you both short-term recovery checkpoints to protect you against anything that may be compromised, and long-term protection that you can also fail back on to recover your data. Zerto also supports analytics, so you can continually monitor your backup data and environment to be able to identify, ensure that you have all the backups that are required and be able to recover those and have compliance-based reporting. The last customer deployed solution I want to look at is a new solution that's just being introduced. This is what we call Dell EMC PowerProtect Cyber Recovery. Many of you are already familiar with Dell EMC PowerProtect Data Domain, which is used as part of many backup solutions to store deduplicated copies of backup data. Now, with this new solution, with a few easy steps, you can extend an existing data domain in your data center to a fully protected environment on AWS. Using Data Domain Optimized Replication Protocol, you can send replicated copies of data to AWS, and Cyber Recovery creates an automated operational air gap by only allowing replication traffic when you need it, and using Data Domain Virtual Edition and AWS security features to block access at all other times. Cyber Recovery ensures that copies of your data are on the target Data Domain Virtual Edition and uses software-based immutability with the recovery environment to ensure your data is always protected. Let's look at some of the key features of this new solution. As I mentioned, this solution focuses on automation, creating an automated air gap, as well as ensuring all replication activities are automated. It also gives you the flexible options to recover to ensure that recovery of your data is where and when you need it. And this is based on the reliable PowerProtect Data Domain Virtual Edition technology. Finally, it offers multiple layers of security and protection utilizing both Dell EMC technology and AWS services to provide a comprehensive and secure solution. Now that we went over some of the customer deployed solutions, I'd like to turn it back over to Girish to review some of our partner SaaS-based solutions.
So thanks, Henry. So in the next few slides, I'm going to cover SaaS-based backup and recovery solutions that are built on AWS. Now, these solutions can protect on-prem as well as cloud-based workloads. The primary benefit of a SaaS solution is that the entire backup infrastructure runs in your vendor's account, and you basically sign up for the service, sign into an easy-to-use portal, configure the applications that you want to protect, create your backup policies, and that's about it, and then start using the solution. So there is no hardware to deploy, no storage to provision or manage, and so on, making the experience extremely simple. So let's look at ransomware solutions from our storage partners Cohesity and Druva. So Cohesity provides backup and recovery solutions for a wide variety of workloads found in data center and the cloud. Cohesity's data protection solution, called as Data Protect, is available in two form factors. One as a customer deployed product that customers deploy and manage the infrastructure on their own. And the second one is a SaaS service that runs on AWS. And as I mentioned, because it runs as a SaaS service, it is very easy to consume with no backup infrastructure to deploy. So Cohesity provides a few different capabilities in the product to guard against ransomware. Cohesity's file system, the brains running in their customer deployed solution or the SaaS service, maintains backups in an immutable read-only format. In addition to this, they have a feature called as data lock that uses the warm or write once, read many capability of the underlying storage system, such as S3 object lock, to actually lock down further and prevent any modification at the hardware or the platform level to your data. Then role-based access with MFA or multi-factor authentication is core part of the platform. Cohesity supports AWS Private Link for S3 as well. So you can send and retrieve your backup data privately over this channel when you're backing up your on-premise sources. On the detection side, they have machine learning based monitoring capabilities that can detect widespread anomalous changes in the data being managed. So for example, if the data being backed up starts looking drastically different due to ransomware encrypting it, that can easily be caught. Now, third is the ability to do rapid recovery in case you have been hit by ransomware. So Cohesity points out anomalous snapshots, identifies the latest clean snapshots, and then enables instantaneous recovery from those clean snapshots. Cohesity supports instantaneous recovery. They have features built into the product that can stand up an application such as a database directly from your backups. And this is a separate read-write copy of your application data that does not modify your backup data at all. So your backup data remains immutable. And then where you can use this functionality is to check the validity of your backup data without having to do any sort of recovery. On the restore side, Cohesity can recover hundreds of VMs, databases, and other applications at scale. They support recovering the applications either back on-prem if your primary workloads are on-prem, or in AWS, where they will automatically convert and run your on-prem applications to run on EC2 instances. Now, in addition to these core capabilities built into the platform, early next year in 2022, Cohesity is going to introduce a separate SaaS product for ransomware protection. As part of this service, Cohesity provides a separate vault or a dedicated fenced account to store your backup data in the cloud. This account is tightly locked down from a permissions perspective and provides this logical air-gapped capability for your backup data. Then from a recovery standpoint, this service can provide a sandbox environment where you can investigate and test out your recoveries safely without worrying about ransomware impacting your applications running in that environment. In this sandbox environment, you can also run vulnerability scans and test your backup data for known vulnerabilities before bringing your data back into production environments. So do check out Cohesity's solutions in this area. Drua is another vendor that provides SaaS-based data protection for workloads ranging from endpoints, including desktops, laptops, and mobile devices, data center workloads, including VMware, Hyper-V, NAS, Oracle, SQL, and others, to cloud workloads such as AWS resources, including EC2 instances, RDS, and then SaaS-based services like M365, Salesforce, Slack, and others. So let's look at the ransomware features. In terms of monitoring capabilities, with their security dashboard, you get insights into access and anomaly detection. So you can get information such as which users access the system, from which location, what is the source IP address, and so on. Then in terms of anomaly detection, any sort of unusual activity about your backups, such as some backups jobs did not run at all, or backups ran, but the amount of data that was backed up was more than expected, and so on, is flagged. So you can easily view that. Drua has built-in integration with security vendors like Palo Alto, FireEye, and others to scan incoming backup data, as well as stored backup data for vulnerabilities. And in case it is found that some backups have been infected, you can isolate those backups and automate the quarantine of those. Now, either you can delete those backups or keep them around in case the entire backup has not been affected and there is some clean data in those snapshots that can be used. Drua recently released a feature called as curated snapshots. And what this does is, given a time range, it can scan all the backups in that time range and pull out the latest clean versions of the objects and form a new clean snapshot that you can then use for recovery. So this speeds up the time to restore the data. And then similar to other solutions that we have discussed so far, Drua can restore the data back to where it came from, or you can restore the backups of on-premise sources into AWS to run as EC2 instances. So in this session, in the interest of time, we were able to cover only a few partner products, but there are a number of other vendors that we work with, and they provide similar data protection capabilities to help protect your data from ransomware. So please check out their solutions as well. Then we have our own AWS internal services like AWS Backup and Cloud Endure that have capabilities to protect your data as well as quickly launch your applications to recover your operations in the case of a ransomware attack. For more information on the storage partner vendors and their solutions, please check out the AWS Storage Competency page of our website. So just search for AWS Storage Competency Partners in your favorite search engine, and you will find this page. With that, I will hand it back to Henry to close it off. Thank you.
Now that we've looked at these various different solutions to help protect against ransomware in your environment, I'd like to share some calls to action with you. First, and most importantly, you should have a comprehensive ransomware recovery plan. You also should consider ransomware with your existing backup and disaster recovery strategies. While these are often related, considering ransomware specifically is important in these strategies. As we went over, ransomware can often require additional steps beyond existing backup and disaster recovery strategies. You also want to review some of the AWS services and features that can help you with this, and some of which we discussed in this session, and we'll also share some additional resources with you that can help point you to additional services, features, and architectural designs that can help protect against ransomware. Finally, you want to ensure that you follow all the security best practices. While this session didn't specifically focus on security, it's always important to incorporate security into all your architectures and designs, including your backup, disaster recovery, and especially ransomware and cyber recovery strategies. So with that, I actually want to share some additional resources with you that can help with that specifically. I'll keep on this slide for a few minutes so you can note down some of these resources. But we have things like the AWS Cloud Security Resource Hub, which is a centralized location where you can get information on security on the AWS cloud. As I also mentioned, the NIST cybersecurity framework is a critical resource that many of our customers use, and here's a good resource for you to look at to see how to align your AWS cloud environment to that NIST framework. Another important resource that AWS and especially AWS solutions architects like myself utilize with customers and with partners is the well-architected framework. Well-architected framework has several pillars that help you align your solution with AWS best practices. A key pillar in the when considering ransomware is the security pillar. So you want to make sure that you've looked at the security pillar thoroughly and are aligning with those best practices when considering your total protection strategy. In addition, there's some additional resources on cybersecurity and threat detection, as well as how to respond with the AWS Security Incident Response Guide. Because just as important as being able to detect or protect against security incident, being able to respond once a security incident or event should occur is equally as important. In addition, there's some resources on securing your AWS cloud environment from ransomware, as well as looking at the intrusion analysis framework for AWS environments. With that, I also wanted to share, finally, some related sessions that might be of interest that address a few other areas of ransomware protection. Specifically, SDG 203, which goes over some additional native AWS solutions for protecting against ransomware using backup and disaster recovery strategies. SEC 308 and 320 deal more with the security aspect of ransomware, helping you to improve your security posture as well as detect ransomware using AWS security services. With that, I want to thank you for coming today,